whenever we look at the past, whether it's through history or archaeology, there always has to be a logical, sensible reason why everything happened. But sometimes you come across an event where, however hard you try, you can't find a normal, sensible reason for it. Which is why we call those events the paranormal. I'm going to look at these phenomena in a really open-minded way to see if I can find out what the truth actually is. I'm working with Becky McCall, who's a science journalist. She's very smart, very sceptical, which will probably help because we're investigating one of the most controversial archaeological claims of the 20th century. The guy was called Bligh Bond. He was the most successful archaeologist at Glastonbury Abbey at the turn of the 20th century. He was coming up with structures, he was coming up with chapels. It was almost as though he knew where to look for the stuff that he was finding. And at the height of his success, he announced the reason that he'd been able to find all this stuff was because he'd been in some kind of psychic communication with a monk who had died 400 years previously, who was showing him where to dig. Glastonbury Abbey is considered to be one of the most important archaeological sites in Britain. It's got a Christian history stretching back 2,000 years, and it's the legendary burial place of King Arthur. But in the 16th century, the magnificent abbey was ransacked during Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries and abandoned. Despite its historical significance, most of what we know about the archaeology of the building is down to one man, Frederick Bligh Bond. An expert in church design and an eminent architect, the Church of England appointed him Director of Excavations at Glastonbury Abbey in 1908. What he discovered was stunning. But can there be any truth to Bligh Bond's claims that his success was down to dead monks telling him where to dig? This is it, Abbey House.
This is as Gothic as it gets.
It certainly is, but if we want to know more about Frederick Bligh Bond, this is the place to start.
So tell me, what was his name again, this guy?
Tim Hopkinson Ball. Apparently knows more about Bligh Bond than anyone else in England. So you've got this very successful, respectable antiquarian, and yet he announces that he's made the archaeological discoveries that he has because he's been communicating with a monk from the Middle Ages.
Yes. Bligh got to know a gentleman by the name of Captain John Allen Bartlett, who was also a West Country antiquary. And Bartlett discovered, quite accidentally about 1900, that he could produce something called automatic writing. And this is what interested Bligh.
Automatic writing? Where does this come from? What is it?
With automatic writing, what happens is that either one or both hands start to literally write automatically by themselves.
Where are the words coming from?
Very good question. When you actually read what's been written, you often meet with personalities. Obviously, it's not you, it's not the conscious you producing the writing, but somebody, something else is.
So essentially what we're talking about is writing on a page which is voices from another time.
Yes, in short.
Do you have any of that writing?
Indeed I do. Would you like to see some?
Yeah.
Right. These are Bond Bartlett's original automatic writings that were produced in 1917. As you can see, it's not very easy to read.
Where did all this happen?
A lot of the time it actually happened in Bond's offices, actually in Bristol. Working day would finish and then John Allen Bartlett would come into the office, Bligh would dismiss his staff and they'd go into a room and they'd sit down together at a table. Bartlett would take a pencil in his hand and Bond would put his hand on the back of Bartlett's and then Bartlett's hand would start to write of its own volition.
As far as Bligh Bond was concerned, he wasn't sceptical about what was going on, was he?
No, absolutely not. From before he started excavating here, Bond had developed a theory which he called the Magna Memoria, the Great Memory Theory. And his idea was basically this. Throughout the whole of our lives, we accrue memories, and when we die, these memories go into a great cosmic library or card index.
So he was sort of tuning into the cosmic soup.
Yes, if you like, yes.
But which one would he rely on if you had to choose one or the other? Automatic writing or good old orthodox methods?
From his point of view, you can't actually beat digging a trench and pulling things out of the ground. However, occasionally there would be problems or glitches which he couldn't explain conventionally, so he would hold an automatic writing session, giving him the inspiration to get over the problem.
And did it work? Were there occasions when the traditional methods failed and he used automatic writing and found something?
Yes. And this is the classic case. We're actually standing in the ruins or foundations of the Edgar Chapel, which is Bond's most spectacular find. For years, Bligh Bond's contemporaries had insisted that there weren't any structures at the east end of the Abbey. But Bligh Bond was unconvinced. Asking for help during one of his automatic writing sessions, the personalities predicted that if he excavated, Bligh Bond would find a chapel. We have here Bond's copies of the automatic writings. This is the great church, and here we have this great eastern extension. A second diagram was produced, which again shows the small internal chapels and then a great chapel to the east. So the scripts were clearly telling him there was a large eastern chapel. Deciding to trust the automatic writings, Bligh Bond sunk trenches and, lo and behold, hit massive foundations. And in a couple of weeks, it uncovered this enormous 4-bay late medieval chapel, huge, great construction.
So this, around here, was all discovered through automatic writing?
Yes. But Bond wasn't only excavating here in 1908, he also made a quite fascinating discovery in the form of a grave.
Where was the grave?
Well, the grave we can place absolutely exactly, which is slap bang here, just to the east of the high altar. At one end of it, Bond found a jumble of bones that had been cut around and mixed up. And so he speculated that perhaps these bones belonged to the last abbot of Glastonbury, Richard Whiting.
Like many Catholic abbots in the Middle Ages, Whiting was wealthy and influential. But in 1539, King Henry VIII closed down his abbey and stole its riches. Whiting was dragged up Glastonbury Tor, where he was hung, drawn and quartered. "400 years passed before Bligh Bond discovered the mysterious bones buried at the altar.
So at this point, Bligh decided to turn to the automatic writings, and the personalities in the writings told him that these were indeed the bones of the martyr. The martyr was he, they said. In other words, these bones did belong to Whiting, and that after he'd been hung, drawn and quartered, the bones had been collected by the faithful and then buried here in secret.
Presumably he couldn't substantiate whether it was Whiting or not.
Not at all. He did his best, though. He took the bones out and showed them to a surgeon in Bristol. When the surgeon announced that the body that the bones came from had been cut about while the person was alive or shortly after death. And Bligh thought that the surgeon's pronouncement, the scripts, and also the peculiarity of the position of the grave all pointed to the fact that these were indeed the last earthly remains of the blessed Richard Whiting. And they still survive today at Prinish Abbey in Gloucestershire.
They're still there.
Indeed they are.
This is important, isn't it? We've now got a body, we've got an identification for that body, and automatic writing has authenticated that identification. And we know where those bones are.
I think we need to go and see them.
I think you're right. Bligh Bond was making astonishing finds, which he said were the result of automatic writing. It claimed those bones belonged to Abbot Whiting, but is that true? I think we should put that to the test. But whatever went on during those automatic writing sessions, I don't know, I fancy having a go. So we're at the beginning of the 20th century. Here in Glastonbury, there's this man called Bligh Bond, the most successful archaeologist they've ever had here. He's pulling stuff out of Glastonbury Abbey that people didn't know existed. And then suddenly, at the height of his fame, he announces he's been able to do all this because he's been in communication with people from the Middle Ages via some psychic process called automatic writing. Now that is pretty weird, isn't it?
It's very strange. But we have to examine the evidence. We have to find out, did these writings really inform his work?
Of course, there are the bones, aren't there? The bones that Bligh Bond found, and through the automatic writing they were authenticated as belonging to Abbot Whiting in the 16th century.
Well, I can go and see these bones.
This is at Prinish?
Yeah, they're in Gloucestershire.
You know, the other thing that really interests me is this whole process of automatic writing. What is it? How does it work? I've found a woman from the Society of Psychic Research who does automatic writing. They call them automatists. And I think she's rather good, and I'm just hoping that if I do some work with her, she'll get us a bit closer to the kind of experience that Bligh Bond himself would have been going through. His theory was that he was tapping into what he called the Great Memoriam. When you die, your thoughts and feelings go into this card index in the sky. Does that echo with the kind of work that you do?
Definitely, it really does. I call it the omniversal mind.
Oh, you have a phrase for it?
I have a phrase for it too, yes. And I do feel that it is this energy field that surrounds us, that has all consciousness that ever has been within it. And I do believe we can tap into it.
Could I do it?
I'm sure you could. So to be able to get you into a good space to do automatic writing, the first thing that we need to do is get you into the right side of your brain.
What is it about the right side as compared with the left side of the
Well,
brain?
the left side is the logical, the critical, the side that's almost like the computer, whereas the right side is the side that interfaces with the omniversal mind, so we can find out things that are outside of our five senses, that are beyond, outside the box, if you like, which is where automatic writing comes from, right?
Yeah.
So do you feel ready to have a go at
Yes.
actually writing?
Sure do.
Yeah. The way, sit back and be comfortable, because if you feel that you're anxious or on duty, then you're going to have your left brain in there.
Okay.
So block off the right nostril, breathe in through the left nostril, which feeds the right brain. This is a yoga technique. And you'll start to get the sense that you're much more relaxed. Bring the energy up. Then direct it to come down your arm, and we'll have the pen ready to write. So bring it up with the breath and then down the arm. And it will start to feel like it wants to go really quite fast. And I'm just going to hold it back and wind it up. Okay?
Yeah.
So let it drop again. Now bring it up with the next breath. So bring it up with the breath. And down the arm. And then we'll draw it back. Oh, yes. Okay, good, good. And then the breath again.
Should I be watching what I'm drawing or not?
Watch it from a distant place, yes. Do watch it, because what we want is cooperation from the left brain. How does it feel?
Fun.
Good. So now go for making it smaller. Just intend. Don't try. Intend to make the writing a little bit smaller. Now bigger. Now smaller. Okay, so there's a certain amount of control.
It's just a laugh.
Yeah, good, good. It's just a laugh. Excellent.
I'm off to Prinnage Abbey. It's up in Gloucestershire. I want to determine whether the bones found at Glastonbury really are those of Abbot Whiting. If they are, Bligh-Bond's claims about automatic writing might be based on something solid. Hi, is it Mary?
Yes, Mary, hi.
Becky. Now, we have some bones here at the monastery. I just wondered if you could take a look at them and tell me if there's anything that might signify they came from somebody who was hung, drawn and quartered as this person was supposed to have been. What might you expect to see?
Well, obviously cut marks that were made at the time of that person's death. So these are very sharp, quite shiny marks that suggest metal on wet bone, as opposed to bone that's been buried and broken in the ground.
Now, what you've come to see are the relics of Blessed Richard Whiting.
That's right, if that's
Yes.
okay, yeah.
Okay. What we have to do is that they are slightly crumbly.
Right.
And so if we put them here, then we can at least save anything.
Yes, of course.
All right.
Absolutely.
So, okay. Now, take out of here, all right, like so. Okay, do you see? So there's 4 there.
So you have bits of his arm there.
You know about this.
Yeah, I'm an archaeologist.
Oh, and then in here, there's more.
So you have an arm bone there, I think part of the upper arm.
Yes.
And the other bit, I think it's a bit of his
See,
elbow.
what would have occurred at the execution on the tour? The whole body would have been smashed up.
And that's your thigh bone, so that's
A thigh bone.
the right thigh bone. So you have some good substantial pieces of the body.
So we have
Yes.
2 arms, 1 leg bone, some fragments.
Yes.
And what's
Those 2 parts are not very crumbly. Looks very soft, doesn't it?
Yes, it's slightly different to the other bones, I would say.
It looks sort of marbly.
Why is there such a change in colour, do you think, Mary? It's dark in places, it's lighter.
All I can say is that this isn't human bone. This is an animal bone. These are human bone, and I would say that they appear to belong to the same person. They're all the same size, but this one is very different in colour because it's a denser bone.
Do you have a question?
I could ask a question that's likely to be validated later on. I could ask, are those bones the bones of Abbot Whiting?
Okay. Okay, so let's have a look. We've got lots of letters. It's like an X and P's. What do you make of it?
A top pig.
Top pig.
A top pig. Sounds like Charlotte's Web, doesn't it? A top pig.
Were there any features that might suggest these bones belonged to somebody who was hung, drawn and quartered, do you think?
I didn't see any marks that suggest that they were cut marks. Only the breaks that were visible on the bones were the typical types of breaks that you expect to see in archaeological bone. But due to the preservation of the bones, the lack of the ends of the bones, I won't be able to tell you whether they were male or how old this individual was, or even how old the bones themselves are. There were also a couple of bones within the relics that are animal bone, that aren't human bone at all.
Of course, when Blythe found these bones, he took them to a surgeon in Bristol, and this surgeon said that they were the bones of a man who was probably killed in the mid-1500s, which is obviously very much in contrast to what you've said here.
Based on modern anthropological methods, there's no way you would be able to come to those conclusions based on the remains that we've just seen.
One of the things about the way Blythe Bond did it was that when he did it on his own, he really wasn't very good at it. But when Bartlett was doing it, and he just had his hand over Bartlett, he seemed to be able to write much more clearly. Now, my left brain is saying, well, yeah, that's how frauds operate. But do you have a reason why it would work better when the two of them had their hands together like that?
Yes, I think it's when two or more people come together with the same intention. The intention is magnified.
All right. Will you put your hand on top of mine
Sure.
and promise me, looking into my eyes, promising me that you won't try and write a particular word or a particular
No,
sentence?
because if I try, we'll be fighting.
Yeah.
So what's our intention?
What was the name of the medieval monk that Blythe Bond and Bartlett were communicating with? Okay.
Okay.
It's Angel.
That's what? Angel.
A-N-G-E-L.
Oh,
You don't believe that? What can you see?
wow. I can see Angel.
There's something definitely there, isn't there? It's like
Ensign.
Ensign. Wenson.
Oh, yeah. And that could be a first name. Imman.
Yeah. Eamon Wenson.
Eamon? Eamon? Eamon?
I have no idea what the name of this monk was, or even if we know the name. So it's going to be
Okay.
very interesting to find out.
And there's a W-A-L there as well. Double L.
Walding.
Wallace.
Oh. You can see, can't you, why Blythe Bond would have taken these and then written out kind of much
Yes,
more
yes.
neatly.
Of course. You'd have to, this is the
Wallace.
interpretation,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Hammond, Wenson, Angel. I have done automatic writing,
Hello.
and it is very strange.
Take a look.
I asked what was the name of the monk.
Right. So you had specific questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
That Bligh-Bond was talking to. We both agreed that that is Angel.
Right. Okay.
Oh, that's my writing up there. Wallace. This one. See that?
Can't make head or tail of it, to be honest.
Oh, come on, try. E-M-M-A.
Emma.
Emma. Or Eman, we weren't quite
Right,
sure what.
right.
And something like Wenson.
I wonder if that's a name from that era then.
No idea. How have you been getting on?
Well, I went to see the bones as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Abbot Whiting bones. I had an expert there, a bones specialist and archaeologist. I mean, the first thing she said was these bones are a mixture of animal and human.
There's animal bones there.
There was one animal bone there,
Yeah.
or maybe two animal bones. It was hard to tell. The other bones were from a human, that's for sure. It could have been Whiting in that sense, but, a big but, there were no cut marks on these bones. They weren't butchered. This man was supposed to be hung, drawn and quartered. No marks at all.
Your osteoarchaeologist, she didn't, I suppose, speculate on what kind of animal bone it must be.
No, I don't think she did. I don't recall she did.
It's just that when I was doing the automatic writing, and I asked whether or not it was the abbot
Okay.
who those bones belong to at Greenwich,
Right.
I got, and I'm sure even you will see this,
That's an A, isn't it?
a top pig. I offer it to you.
In 1918, Bligh-Bond published a book that was full of automatic writings. He believed that the messages were coming from medieval monks in their own language, Middle English. But whose words were really going down on the page? Bligh-Bond's or the long-dead monks? There's an expert at the University of Bristol who might be able to tell us whether what's in that book is really authentic Middle English. I brought along a book that Bligh-Bond wrote called The Gates of Remembrance, and within it there are a number of transcripts of these automatic writings.
Right. I see.
So this is what he received from the
Okay,
monks.
yeah. This is interesting. We begin with a bit of Latin, just a formula which is quite common. Gloria in excelsis tibi Deo, glory on high be to you, God. And then you get something that purports to be Middle English. The time is near, dig well, and those things which ye seek shall be given you. And then...
Which ye seek. That sounds very Middle English.
Yeah,
To me.
that's all right, that bit. But let me read on, right? Shall be given you, but search carefully, lest ye eradicate those things that be left for your guidance. Now, that word, eradicate...
It's modern, isn't it?
Bound to be. Even that word there I've not come across in Middle English. Guidance. I don't think that's a Middle English word. Let's have a look at some other passages here. There's a few touches that are interesting.
Image.
Image, spelled with a Y.
That's typical, is it?
That's how you would spell it if you were medieval. Yes, you wouldn't spell it with an I. But look at this one here. With a balcony. With a balcony.
Yes. Okay.
That's an Italian word. You'd say balcone in Italy,
Yeah.
and all those words come in the Renaissance period.
Right. And that's far too late for this, isn't it?
Yeah, I've just not come across that in all my years of reading Middle English.
Could it be that, you know, this is an educated man, this Guy Bond. He's an archaeologist, he's interested in the period, so he's bound to have read some medieval English texts. It could be that if he wants this to look authentic, he could quite easily be slipping in a bit of the medieval English where he wants to.
Yes.
With his knowledge.
Yes. I bet there are just too many words that weren't in use in the medieval period.
So do you think it's a fraud, this automatic writing?
Yes, yes. I'm afraid I cannot authenticate this as proper Middle English.
Although it felt like something happened during my session with June Laney, I'm not sure I know what that something was. I'm going to have a chat with an academic, a specialist in parapsychology. I'm sure he'll have a theory about what was going on. When I was doing that automatic writing yesterday, something happened, and I wasn't faking it, and I wasn't trying to make something happen.
Well, I can believe that that is exactly how it felt. I would say you are actually producing that writing yourself. It's your own muscular movements. You're just not consciously aware of the fact that that's what you're doing.
It's very interesting. You've got an idea in your mind, and there's just this subtle twitching that might take place. One of the things that was fascinating about Bligh Bond was that when he worked with Bartlett with one hand over the other, the signals were much stronger.
I think that's absolutely fascinating. And the moment I heard about that, the first thing it made me think of was a phenomenon known as facilitated communication. I suspect that what we were getting was the information from Bligh Bond, but actually it felt to him, it felt to both of them as if it was coming from somewhere else.
So it's not Bligh Bond putting his hand over and just going, right there.
That's right, it's exactly.
There's something about his passion for ensuring that that information comes across somehow in tiny ways means that the hand will move.
And it's the same with the Ouija board phenomenon. If you've ever played around with a Ouija board, which I know lots of people say you're not supposed to, but I have done that, and it feels as if the glass or the planchette is actually moving on its own. But I think it's a very interesting kind of social psychological phenomenon where everybody's just kind of moving it very, very slightly, so slightly that it's not even conscious, but the actual movement is coming from within them and not from some external source.
You would suspect that rather than being a fraud, subconsciously he moved his hand in order to create the answers that he wanted.
That's exactly what I think was going on.
It is plausible. The writing's not really automatic, it's being subconsciously directed by the writer.
Hello, is that Tony?
Yeah.
Oh, hi Tony. It's David. I've just been doing a bit of research into some of the words that came up during your automatic writing session.
Go on.
Basically, I found this old text. It's a kind of ancient history of Glastonbury, and it's written by a chap called William of Malmesbury in the medieval period.
Yeah.
Now, according to this text, St. Patrick came back from Ireland in his old age, and he went to Glastonbury, and he found in Glastonbury 12 brothers living as hermits, and one of them is called Wallace.
Oh, you're joking.
I'm not. I'm absolutely serious.
How am I going to make people believe that this is true? Now, you know that June and I, a couple of days ago, asked Bligh Bond through the automatic writing to tell us the names of the monks who told him where to dig. And you've seen this, haven't you? This was the squiggle, and out of it we interpreted these three names: Wallace, Eamon Wenson and Angel.
Yes.
June, Do you know the medieval document written by William of Malmesbury about Glastonbury?
No.
I swear to you, nobody who was in that room when we were together had ever heard anything about it. And David, our researcher, phoned me up to tell me that in this medieval document it describes when St. Patrick, this is in the time just after the Romans have left Britain, he came to Glastonbury where he met 12 monks who were living there as hermits. He took one of them up Glastonbury Tor, and the name of the one that he took up Glastonbury Tor was Wallace. They stay there for 3 months fasting and praying. During that time, Patrick saw a vision of God, or Emmanuel, as he was also called at that time, and on the strength of that, they decided where to locate the new abbey at Glastonbury, dedicated to the Archangel Michael.
I've gone all goosebumps.
What are your first thoughts?
Well, coming from my slightly sceptical position, disbelief, I suppose, first of all.
Why? Why, as a scientist, do you immediately say disbelief?
Because there's got to be a lot of people called Wallace. It just happens there was one called Wallace. Well, I'm sure if you look through other texts as well, there'd be more Wallaces and lots of other people too. Perhaps it was a common name. Angel, well, yeah, we're talking about something ecclesiastical. I expect an angel's going to pop up now and again. And your interpretation of this Emin or Emma Venson is Emmanuel, so you've changed that to fit it.
Let me come back to you on your criticisms.
Yeah.
I can quite believe that I might subconsciously have written the word angel down because what we were talking about were spiritual things. I can see why I might put a squiggle down and interpret it as angel. Emin Wenson and Emmanuel, well, again, looking at it again, I could say that there's E-M-M-A-N-L-L. I could equally, as you say, I could be twisting it. Wallace, I don't buy your idea that that is just out of the ether. I would never in a million years have thought of a monk as being called Wallace down near the south coast. To me, Wallace is almost the epitome of the Scottish name. Wallace, if Wallace is anything else, it's a shoe shop as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, I'll concede to that. If somebody said to me, think of the name of a monk, I don't think Wallace would spring to mind. No, okay.
So there is something eerie there, isn't there?
There's certainly something a little bit eerie. Yeah, no, I'd agree with you there. Certainly something that I wouldn't have expected. I'll go that far. Those names, Angel and Wallace, part of me still thinks they could be a coincidence. Bly Bond produced thousands of scripts about Glastonbury, but I wonder if there are any clues in the automatic writing that remain undiscovered and we could put to the test.
Back in 1908, Bond was asking the personalities in the automatic writings about various different saints and chapels here in the Abbey. And he asked a question, can you tell us anything about the other saints in the church? And the answer came, relics of ye saints rested by ye tomb of Johannes the Kentishman, close by the great sacristy on the north side of the east end of ye great church. Would I could tell ye more, but all hath perished. What more would ye? Now, we know from surviving sources that John of Kent, Johannes the Kentishman, was buried in this area over here, close to the high altar. And according to the automatic script, the great sacristy, so it's going to be quite a large building, is to the north of that tomb.
Okay.
In other words, it's going to be here in front of us. And what's interesting is that nobody has ever excavated on this side, so we have no idea what's under the turf here.
So as far as we know, there's nothing here, as far as we know. But the automatic writing suggests there should be.
Exactly. Now, in 1910, at an automatic writing session, Bond asked the question, was there anything built to the east of the Edgar Chapel?
So east of the Edgar Chapel, that's around here?
Well, yep, these foundations here we can see in front of us are the Edgar Chapel, so it's this area here. Was there anything built here? They said to the east of the Edgar Chapel there was a freestanding structure in this area where we are here. And Bond had no reason to suspect it.
No.
Nothing in surviving historical records that said there was a building to the east, and you wouldn't really expect to find one here.
So just according to the writings, there could actually be something here?
They're quite clear. The writings are quite clear on the fact that the building stood to the east of the Edgar Chapel.
Wow. Now that's quite exciting.
I spoke to Tim Hopkinson Ball again yesterday.
Apparently, according to the writings, there's a gatehouse east of the Edgar Chapel. Now, this gatehouse is mentioned in the writings and only in the writings.
You mean we don't actually know whether it exists or not? It's just that the automatic writing tells us that it exists. So if we managed to get some geophysics, some machines which would work out whether or not there were structures under the ground, we could find out whether Bleibond's automatic writing was actually ahead of what people knew at the time.
Exactly. It provides us with the perfect opportunity to look at this in a scientific way and actually see if, prove empirically, if there's anything in it. This man was convinced.
Of course, if Bleibond had geophysics, he wouldn't have had to rely on automatic writing, but he didn't. So we want you to establish whether the archaeology that he predicted would be under the grass at the Abbey really is there, or whether it was just a fantasy on his part.
Okay. Thank you.
Why would there be anything here?
Well, according to historical record, there shouldn't be anything here. But, according to the automatic writings, there's a gatehouse.
We're at the north here yet?
We are north of the altar, yeah.
So if we find that there is a sacristy here, that's well on the way to confirming that there was something in that automatic writing. It does seem to me tragic that in 1919 Bleibond has the courage to tell the world about the automatic writing, and immediately his reputation falls to pieces. He's banned from the Abbey and he dies a broken and lonely man.
Well, it wasn't quite like that. Problems really started in the early 20s. He became more and more possessive of the Abbey site. He saw it as his Abbey and the discoveries were his discoveries.
So are you actually saying that it was nothing to do with his spiritual connections?
Indeed, it was nothing to do with the automatic writing sessions or his idea about the Magna Memoria or anything like that at all.
But it is true, isn't it, that they took the key of Glastonbury Abbey away from him?
Yes, it is true. He had had his own pass key made to the Abbey and he was required to officially surrender it, and it, of course, symbolically, if nothing else, marked the end of his connection with the Abbey.
That is sad, isn't it? I guess this is it. Make or break time for Bleibond and his dead monks. All done.
Yes, there we go.
Ta, thanks, Em.
What have we got here?
What do you think? This is it,
Some
the
results.
geophysics.
Right.
How long have you been waiting for this?
Oh, quite some time.
Would 10 years be a good guess?
Or something like that.
Okay.
Right.
Number one. You remember just beyond those stones there, we were looking up that grass in order to see if we could find Bleibond's gateway. You ready?
Go on then.
There's the stones. Beyond that is that slope. There's the hedge, and beyond that, the garden.
So, what does blue mean? What's the red mean?
Blue basically means there isn't anything under the ground there. Red means there could well be. Now, so you might get quite excited about that, except what that is that tree. And over here, these two intriguing little phenomena are probably tree boles. So the sum total of Gateway there is zero. Is zero, right. Exactly. But that was only the first place with GFs. The second place was along there, where we thought there might be a sacristy. This is the extension of that wall there. So once again...
A sacristy is conspicuous by its absence, yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Well, not as bad as you might think, because I've always been of the opinion that automatic writing gives you what you want and what you're looking for. So it doesn't surprise me from that point of view. I would have been a lot more surprised if you actually found a whacking great sacristy there.
Becky?
Well, dare I say, I actually feel quite disappointed, to be really honest, because part of me really wanted to find something.
Well, part of you just may be right, because there is something intriguing. You see, 7/8 of the way along this wall, we have this gap here, and can you see this lighter blue there? Geophys say that could possibly be a wall, in which case there could be a little room there. No one's putting any money on it.
A small sacristy, perhaps.
So what you found for us is, in fact, the ghost of a sacristy.
We have found a ghost.
Here we go. Right.
So, no hidden sacristies, no proof that those bones actually belong to the abbot, and according to the parapsychologist, automatic writing is nothing more than a twitch of the wrist. He certainly had a good hit rate with the excavations, but that could have been more luck than judgment. I'm split about those automatic writings because half of me thinks it's a load of complete nonsense. But on the other hand, I had an experience when I did automatic writing that I just can't explain. Oh, you remember that bone that they thought was the abbot's bone, but it turned out to be an animal? And in the automatic writing, I wrote down a top pig. What did the osteoarchaeologist say? What kind of bone is it?
Well, I asked her and she said it's a medium-sized mammal.
Is a pig a medium-sized mammal?
Well, I suppose so.
Suppose so?
Yes.
That's scary. Da, 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 da.
Tony and Becky are back tomorrow at 9 with one of the most intriguing cases of group reincarnation on record. But tonight at 12:20, Jamie Bell is falling for an older woman in the quirky romance Hallam Foe. Next, though, it's about the girls who were sent away for their sin. Geraldine McEwen in The Magdalene Sisters.